what we are doing for ourselves in order to unite Africa. We belong to this continent. We don't mind having and bearing sanctions banning us from Europe. We are not Europeans.
We don't mind having and bearing sanctions banning us from Europe. We belong here. We are not Europeans, excuse me. We are not Europeans. We are Africans. So if the Europeans think that by standing for our people, by defending the integrity and the dignity of Africa, they're going to sanction us, then we don't mind. And then we don't even want to go there to Europe, because after all, we are not Europeans. They need us as Africans more than we need them. And it is about time that African leaders realize that. That was a great speech coming from the great late Mugabe, President Mugabe. Yes, so as President Mugabe was talking about we as children of Africa, we don't mind going to Europe or taking the pain of sanctions, because anytime at all an African stands for his people, an African stands for his or her people, the Europeans will sanction you. They will tell you they will not allow you to come to their country, because they know how they puppet those puppet leaders in Africa, how they see Europe to be their heaven, how they value Europe. So when they sanction them, they start panicking. They start, oh, my children cannot go to school in Europe again. No. The revolutionary Africans don't mind if you ban them, if you sanction them and tell them not to come to Europe. After all, Africa is more better than Europe in any form. The weather, the people, the environment is far, far better and more relaxing, refreshing than Europe. So how will they ban you from coming to Europe and you start panicking? Because this is what they do. The other day when Nigeria was having elections, you see them, America, Europe, putting sanctions on some officials, and they start panicking. Why? Because they know that your children are in their countries going to school. You yourself, that is where you hide your money, the money that you are stolen from Africa. But those leaders who have not stealing anything from Africa, they don't care. They don't care about the sanctions of Europeans. And yes, this video that I'm going to show you is a typical example of that. And then we keep telling African leaders, stand up for yourself and stand up for your people. Look, when Mugabe first took this decision, a lot of Africans, including Zimbabweans, citizens from Zimbabwe, were demonizing him. Sanctions upon sanctions upon sanctions. Today, what have we seen? The Americans have lifted the sanctions on Zimbabwe. The Americans have decided to lift the sanctions on Zimbabwe because they know that continue to put this sanction on Zimbabwe is only going to affect them, not Zimbabwe. Yes, they're intended to cripple the economy of Zimbabwe, but what happened? We have overcome that. So we are telling African leaders, don't be scared. The fear is too much. These people they cannot do you anything. And this video I'm going to show you, you're gonna see today in Mali, today in Burkina Faso. Today the Germans are running back to Africa. These same people who told you that they cannot stand a dictator, a so-called dictator, a military government, they cannot stand it because they believe in democracy. And as long as you have taken down a so-called democratic leader, because after all, the government that was taken down in Burkina Faso wasn't a democratic government. Somebody who has stayed, Blaise Compaoré, after assassinating the great Thomas Sankara, has stayed in power for more than 3 decades. So if such a government is taken down, how hypocritical these European criminals who call themselves colonial masters can be to say this is a dictatorship, so they don't have anything to do with them. But the leadership stood on their ground. And this is what we are expecting from our leaders in Africa. This is what we want to see our leaders doing. They stood in their ground and they say, look, if you don't want to do business with us, there are other people who are better than you who will do business with us. Today, Germany say, you know what? I'm not going to follow what France is doing. I'm not going to follow the Americans, because after all, these people don't even trust themselves. Because after all, the American has snitched to go to these countries and started supporting so-called giving aid and everything to Burkina Faso and then Mali and Niger. So which we are going, the German ambassador was in Burkina Faso, and I want to show you the video as to the things that he talked about. And then you will see that we are encouraging our leaders to stand on their ground. Don't care. You don't have to bother yourself about their sanctions. They need you more than you can ever think. They need Africa more than Africa need them. Let us watch the video. Come back and analyze it. This video is coming from one of our great brother who always analyze it, and then we take it and then we react to it. We thank him for the great work he's doing, and then let us go and watch the video. Come back and react to it.
Ali, Ibrahim Traoré, and the military juntas of Mali and Niger are the perfect examples of leaders who stand for what they believe in no matter the consequences, and they are a lesson to other African leaders who willingly become puppets of the West because of the pressure that if a leader stands for what he believes long enough, the West will have no choice but to work with him. Do you know why? It's because they need Africa. When Ibrahim Traoré first took power, the country faced serious condemnations and sanctions from the West and Europe. A lot of European countries, including Germany, suspended their partnership with Burkina Faso until, according to them, Ibrahim Traoré handed back power to civilian rule and conducted an election. However, despite the sanctions and the hardships that came with it, Traoré stood his ground and persevered. And guess what? That perseverance has paid off. Not only did the U.S. Parliament recognize that Ibrahim Traoré and the other military junta are, in their own words, sophisticated, meaning they are intelligent and can't be easily swayed, the Minister of Germany for Economic Cooperation and Development, Svenja Schulze, recently paid a diplomatic visit to Burkina Faso, making her the first European country to visit the country after Europe decided to suspend cooperation with Burkina Faso after Traoré became president. The reason why this is important and significant is that after Traoré took power, he did not grovel at the feet of Europe so that they would resume financial aid to the country, and neither did he seek any partnership with them like most African leaders would do. He also did not fall under the pressure of the financial sanctions imposed on his country. Instead, he looked for other alternatives. And now Europe is beginning to realize that it is slowly losing ground in the Sahel at a time when every country is fighting to get a piece of the region because the world understands that Africa is the future. This is why Germany decided to take that first step to seek collaboration and resume partnership with Burkina Faso. During her visit, the German minister met with key government officials, including Burkina Faso's foreign minister, as well as civil society representatives and other stakeholders. However, the most important part of her visit to Burkina Faso was what she said in an interview when asked about Germany's cooperation with Burkina Faso's military government. The German foreign minister stated that Germany would prefer to work with democracies around the world, but the government of Germany has come to the realization that most people live in an autocratic system and there is nothing they can do about it, so they have to deal with it. Isn't this interesting to hear? Coming from the mouth of the same people who condemn Burkina Faso as if coming into power through a coup and not an election is the worst crime ever is certainly interesting. But the question is, how come Germany and the rest of Europe and the West forget this fact that not every country is a democracy? And the fact that they feel democracy is the best form of government doesn't mean other countries have to practice it. The point is, it's time for the West and Europe to realize that every country is free to choose whatever form of government they want to practice. And that era of pressuring others to practice their kind of government should end. Now, the German minister went on to say that Germany wants to fight climate change and ensure that people can comfortably stay in their homes without seeing the need for migration. And in order to do this, there is a need for cooperation and acceptance of any kind of government. She further added that there is no black and white when it comes to collaboration and partnership. And then she added another significant statement that revealed another reason why Germany decided to move ahead with resuming its partnership with Burkina Faso. The German minister made it known that Germany understood that if it was not in the region, then there would be others to take their space, and the others she was referring to were none other than Russia. She specifically stated that Germany could not afford to leave the region for the Russians, and that development cooperation and partnership with Burkina Faso was needed. This kind of sounds desperate, but it simply highlights the point that Africa doesn't need the West or Europe, but the West and Europe needs Africa. Africa shouldn't be the one begging for collaboration and partnership with Western countries, regardless of their so-called economic and military might. Whenever there is an Africa-US summit, or Africa-Europe, or any kind of Africa and another country summit, African leaders do not need to pack their bags and travel to the country organizing the summit, because those summits only serve to show how weak African leaders are, and for the country organizing the summit to show its power. It's time for African leaders to be assertive, and once African leaders can understand that they do not need to act beggarly and victim-wise to get what they want, things will begin to change. In response to what the German minister said about Russia's collaboration with Burkina Faso, the Burkinabe foreign minister told the German minister without mincing words that cooperation with Russia is a question of demand and supply. He said that Russia is a partner that respects the decision of Burkina Faso, and its offers meet the needs of the Burkinabe government and its people. So before any talk of partnership, Germany has to understand that Russia is already a partner in Burkina Faso, so any partnership with Germany will have to fit into that framework. This is magnificent. The leadership of Burkina Faso has truly been transformed. You see, Germany, like other European and Western countries, does not want any African country to collaborate with Russia to reduce what they call Russian influence in Africa. And that's why the German minister paid a visit to Burkina Faso. That's also why she said that Germany doesn't want Russia to occupy their space if they continue to suspend cooperation with countries in the Sahel. The German defense minister, Boris Pistorius, also confirmed this when he said in February that it's time for Germany to change its approach and seek closer cooperation with African states, even if they do not share the same values or meet.
So as you can see, that is Burkina Faso. After all the noise that they were saying, they don't want to do business with dictatorship. They only believe in democracy. Democracy, as Malcolm X told us, is nothing but hypocrisy. They don't believe in any democratic thing. All that they believe is their own interest. In the early 60s, when Africa was gaining our independence and stuff like that, it was all democratic leaders that they were sponsoring coup d'etats in Africa to eliminate, because they know these democratic leaders were standing for the continent of Africa. It was against the interests of the criminal Western world. So they have to sponsor a lot of coups to take down these democratic leaders in Africa. The likes of in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Congo, everywhere. They have to sponsor coups to take down all these democratic leaders. And they come back and put in puppet military leaders, because that time military governance was working for the interests of the European colonial criminals. So from the 60s, Kotoka in Ghana, all those guys, Mobutu Sese Seko, all those people, they were military guys, but the Western world, well, they were working with them. Why? Because those military guys were working for the interests of the Western world. And getting to the late 80s to the 90s, democratic leaders started to get to work for the interests of the Western world, because all these military leaders, they began to realize that no, they have been duped by these Europeans. So they started to think and start to work for the continent of Africa, and then they started bringing in these so-called democratic leaders, because these democratic leaders has gone to school in Europe and they have been brainwashed to come back home and then work for the interests of Europe. So they started putting in democracy, because that time democracy was working for the good of the Western world. But before then, military leaders, military governments were working for the interests of the Europeans. You see how they are manipulating us as children of Africa. And this is what we are saying. You see now that we have leaders who are standing on their grounds. Look at what the German foreign minister is saying in Burkina Faso. Look at what he's saying. So it tells you that they don't believe in no democracy. There's nothing like something called democracy. The Americans doesn't practice democracy. All that they practice is the interest of America. The British, they don't know what is democracy. All that they know is the interest of Britain. The French, they don't know what is democracy. All that they know is the interest of France, but they come to Africa and all that they do is preaching as democracy, democracy, democracy. Today that Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger said enough is enough of this democracy. That is nothing but hypocrisy. They said they're not going to work with them. They said they're not going to work with them because they don't believe in military governance. They believe in only democracy. And without democracy, they cannot work with you. And they stood their ground. Today, you see what is happening. They are going back. And this is what we are telling African leaders. They need you more than you can ever think. They need Africa. Without Africa, they are nothing. So if they come threatening you with sanctions, take it. Take the sanctions and tell them, go to hell with whatever you think we have our way of governance. And we are going to govern our countries based on the interests of the country. If democracy is good for us, we will go for democracy. If dictatorship, so-called, is good for us, we will go for that. If that is the interest of our country, that is what we're going to go for. And they will respect you. They will threaten you. That is how the European is. We have dealt with them individually. When you meet a European, the first thing that he wants to do is to intimidate you. Intimidate you to make you feel inferior. If you say, no, I'm not going to take it, then they will now come back and then they will work with you. I said, we have worked with you individually. And then we know. So sometimes I wonder why our leaders, so-called leaders, are scared to tell them or to stand on their ground, just as Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are doing. Today, if the foreign minister of Germany is going to, you will see the British going there very soon. You will see the French apologizing very soon. You're going to see all of them because they know, first of all, they don't believe each other. And that is what Africans, we have to realize. First of all, the Europeans, with all the European Union, whatever, they do not trust each other. No. We Africans, we have trust. We trust ourselves. We trust each other a little bit. For them, they don't trust each other. They can betray each other for their own interest. So if they can do what they are doing, they can do that to themselves. You can imagine if you are outsider, what they can do to you. All the things that the horrific things that they cause, the damage that they caused during slavery and colonization in Africa, they did that to themselves. They enslave each other. They treat each other like nothing. So if they could do that to themselves, you can imagine what they will do to you. So as I said, they don't trust themselves. You understand? So if they come to Africa, we should know that these people are nothing. They are just as human beings like us. So we shouldn't go about bowing down to them, just as some of our leaders are doing. When Burkina Faso refused to bow down to them, today they are going back. The other day we saw America going back to provide motorbikes, saying they want to help them fight terrorism. Today the German foreign minister is there. What is he saying? He said, we don't want to be left behind. So as we keep saying, Africans, we hold the key to every country or to this world's success, progress. So we have to realize that. And then we must put leaders on position. Leadership position. We must put people on leadership positions who know the value of Africa. The sad reality about Africa is that most of our leaders doesn't know the value of Africa. And that is the reason why you see them $20 million, $100 million. The other day, the French wanted to bribe Niger, just $100 million. Because the military leadership know the value of Niger. They say no. If it was to be a so-called democratic leader, he would take it because they will offer him that and also offer his children education in Paris. They will take it. But the military leadership say, no, we don't want it because we know the value of Niger. And today, Niger is progressing under a leadership of military. Burkina Faso is progressing under a leadership of military. Ghana doesn't have electricity. Nigeria doesn't have electricity under the leadership of democracy. Now, democracy we go chop. Is it democracy we want? Or we want leadership? We want a system that will give us dignity. If democracy is not giving us dignity, if democracy is not giving us food to eat, we don't want that. Because it no be democracy we go chop. I thank you very much for coming around. Please, if you appreciate what we are doing, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let us take our YouTube channel to 10K subscribers. We thank those of you who have already subscribed. We appreciate your support. And those of you who haven't taken time out of your busy schedules, please, we know it is difficult times, but it wouldn't take you anything to just click on the subscription